MK was a government program run by the Central Intelligence Agency. Originally started as something called Bluebird in 1948-49, morphed into Artichoke, and then in 1952 became MK. It was a mind control program, a brainwashing program. The CIA was trying to learn how to control people's behavior without their knowledge. Now, this all came out in Senate and congressional hearings in the 70s. It was exposed.
The Department of Army has informed me that my father was a victim of a drug test program administered by the New York State Psychiatric Institute under an Army contract.
Seeking a new weapon aimed not at the body, but at the mind.
Those who control your words control your mind.
The U.S. government is engaged in a large number of secret medical experiments designed to help win the Cold War. Developing techniques for mind control to create a so-called Manchurian candidate.
Raymond Prentice Shaw. Listen.
Welcome back to the channel. Let's get diving.
Their main objective was to create what they called hypno-programmed assassins, people who would kill on command, popularly known as Manchurian candidates. Through drugs and hypnotism, the objective was to get people to go commit an act of murder against their moral code and have no memory of their programming.
Manson and the CIA and LSD.
Was Manson, a lab rat for the CIA, and how far down that rabbit hole do you want to go? It'd be interesting to know how many people are aware. I mean, I know some people that that's what they do.
Midnight Climax. Yeah. Operation Midnight Climax was a CIA-funded program where they dosed up Johns. They created brothels and dosed up Johns with LSD against their knowledge, and let them fornicate and have a good old time with these ladies of the evening.
Man,
and,
my God.
and watched them and filmed them and studied them.
This is the story of a 30-year search by U.S. intelligence agencies to perfect mind control.
Slavery.
They sedated you.
Yes.
Yeah. What was the thought process behind it when you talked to a doctor about this? What did they tell you was wrong with you?
They told me I was bipolar, and I remember going on TMZ and saying, slavery is a choice. And they medicated me for saying that, for having that opinion and saying it out loud. But as I put those contracts up, I'm saying, this is a choice. As
you didn't mean people being abducted and brought into slavery and put into chains was a choice. What you were talking about is people making decisions that would enslave them financially and enslave their life.
Yeah.
But it was taken out of context, and it was taken in the least charitable way, and they decided to try to say, look at crazy Kanye, look at this shit he's saying.
When you see the checkerboards on the floor, when you see the skull and bones, when you see the signs and symbolism, when you slow down the music, Jay-Z new video with Nas and DJ Khaled, it's a scene where it's checkerboards. These are all occult, Satanist, symbolic symbols. So what I'm saying is, and I'm gonna tell you why and me personally, I've been in music for a minute, had deals and all that, bro. I don't give a fuck about this shit. But what I know, for me, I study so I know when I see it, so I know what to avoid. Because niggas could be trying to sacrifice your ass and you're not studying. God told us to read and be knowledgeable. So when I see Jay-Z go, what does this mean? What does this mean? What does this mean? You're not no gang member. You got checkerboard floors in your shit. You got skull and bones. What does this mean? Because it's not just there. You look at Cardi B's album cover. It's checkerboard. You look at Dream Dog. Now she's the checkerboard too. Like, I'm not, y'all niggas, let me tell you something. These motherfuckers sell their soul. They practice witchcraft.
What does it mean, though?
What it means.
What does the checkerboard mean?
It means mind control. So you got classical conditioning, you got operational conditioning. So what they do is they use programming. So
MK.
Yeah, but it's to push an agenda. So
you heard of this shit before, right?
I heard it. I'm going to play a recording of people chanting, "That is embarrassing," 4 times. After the 4th time, write down what you hear. Interesting. Almost everyone here heard that is embarrassing. Listen again and watch the screen. You heard the same thing every single time. Our eyes and ears take in electrical signals which our brains interpret based on our expectations. We don't see reality. We see our.
No matter what the weather, you know, I didn't have any clothes and was turned loose in a woods and then literally hunted by men with guns, and never knowing whether or not I would actually be shot. They use hunting dogs to track, which was really, really traumatic. And of course, it was kind of designed to where there's no place to run, no place to hide, because there was no way to get away from them. And it was at one of those human hunting places that I saw George Bush Jr. hunted just as I was. And his own father and Dick Cheney were a part of extreme trauma base for him because they were creating a Manchurian candidate who would become president.
Go on.
So the folks say, and the girl made him stop eating candy.
It was absolutely horrible that anybody was being hunted. And I've always had extreme compassion for George Bush Jr. It was an effort to be able to keep all the power in the Bush-Clinton dynasties.
People think, well, you run against each other, you're enemies. Political enemies. Well, we were friends before he beat me.
There was something I told you in one of the previous videos. Left wing, right wing. It's all part of the same bird. Man, let's keep diving.
One of the first times that anybody had run into a powerful drug that was different than anything else that they knew anything about.
John Gittinger, recently retired chief psychologist for the CIA. This is the first time Gittinger has been interviewed publicly.
We could disable a whole city by putting a very small amount on a water supply. After all of these years of us, those of us who are involved in then looking for this secret drug, this was the only thing that began to look for the first time like it might be something like that. People who were doing the research were people who would be doing the research regardless of who was the sponsor. I don't think anybody working in that time in the remotest ever thought that it would blow up into the kind of thing that it did.
History will judge the role of the CIA and other intelligence agencies in unwittingly contributing to the counterculture of the 60s through their intense interest in LSD and other hallucinogenics. But for the moment at least, the argument can be made that the CIA helped usher in the age of Aquarius. One said, I think every last one of us felt sorry to attempt this kind of thing. We knew we were crossing the line. The search would be endless. From brothels, an agent says, we learned a lot about human nature in the bedroom, to the mystical rites of a magical mushroom ceremony performed by an Indian shaman, to a Spanish bull ring. The bull has had electrodes implanted in the brain and is controlled by a scientist. There would be victims. One intelligence agency tried to peel this man's mind back to reveal its deepest secrets.
I lived through it.
This man worked on some of these programs. He would write of his work, it was fun, fun, fun. This is the story of the search for mind control.
So that's crazy. They're using, or were using, and still using, drugs. Well, that makes sense. P. Diddy and his baby oil full of GHP. Epstein and his ecstasies and cocaine with Clive. Yo, there's so much. And that's just the baseline drugs. They hype these drugs up. And LSD, I've never tried it, but I've heard horror stories about it. And the fact that you could enter different dimensional planes with that. But that's a whole different thing they're doing here. They're trying to rip someone's mind apart and suggest their own opinions. Reminds you of that movie, Inception, with Leonardo DiCaprio. Inception, all these movies, music, all in plain sight. Nothing is new under the sun. And this has not just been happening since the 1960s. It's been happening since the dawn of time with entities. All right, let's keep diving.
This spasm of publicity about what happened from Mexico to London.
It's pretty rough. Yeah. Yeah, it's kind of weird. Ah, weird. Hello. Oh my goodness. Hello. Ew. Strong Brittany. Yeah, it was a weird. Ew. I'm embarrassed. Can we stop?
So what happened to Brittany there? Did she have an emotional break or an emotional glitch?
100%. So in your estimation, there could be subliminals that are being put out.
100%. It's definitely happening.
Do you have secondhand knowledge of that, or did you actually see briefings on it?
No, I've seen, I was part of a project one time in Los Alamos. Well, it wasn't owned by Los Alamos, but was associated with a corporation there that dealt with frequency control, mind control, and cellular frequency control to make you angry or to make you sad or to, manipulate you in a way that this would happen.
I absolutely believe that technology, the internet, can manipulate one's emotion, feelings, and frequencies. Keyword frequency. Not just high frequency chaos, but frequencies have a negative or a positive effect on the body, the soul, depending on the type of frequencies that's being, signaled out there. And what I mean by that, frequencies from music, the drums, the piano, the guitars, the riffs, all that stuff has an influence on the brain, and it changes the mood. Now imagine using Wi-Fi, the antennas, DirecTV, Alexa, all these devices pulling signals. Now it's trapped in your house. Wi-Fi, along with your cameras, computers, TVs, cell phones, all on a 5G network, which is sending frequencies throughout your body. We're living in radiation, people. That's why I hate having the phone near to my ear. I always keep it this far away. Don't keep it in my pocket because everything has radiation. All these devices. What are your thoughts there?
The reason that all your computer screens are blue lit, the reason none of them are red lit, the reason none of them pay attention to circadian biology is because that original technology was developed in a government program that Bobby Kennedy knows about, and I happen to know about because I went to medical school at LSU. For those of you who've never heard about Operation Paperclip, you think it's all conspiracy theory. So at Tulane Neurology and Tulane Neurosurgery in the 50s and 60s and 70s and 80s, the CIA started a program there where they would do all these crazy things to monkeys. And the CIA wanted to see how they could control things utilizing different things like drugs and things like that. Where the neurosurgeons got involved, which is my clade, we would drill the tops of the heads off, put wires into the thalamus, put electricity in there, and kind of see what kind of behavioral changes we could have. One of the guys that was in that program was a guy named Professor Delgado. He got the idea to take it in a bigger animal. When he saw that we could control the behavior with the wired device, he said, what if we do it wirelessly? So he checked it in monkeys and checked it in bulls, and it turned out you can do it wirelessly with RFID chips and semiconductors. And the CIA took it to the next level. They said, well, since this is electromagnetic radiation and they begin on wirelessly, What if we did it through light, through screens? And it turns out you can. And that's the reason why all your computer screens have the frequencies they have. So why is this all important?
And we also did experimentations to using different chemicals to see if you can induce a person to commit a crime or induce him to do that or to do this. Of course, the CIA claimed that it didn't carry it through. The documentation we got was actually that they did that. Then we came across the overall project called MK Ultra. Its earlier code name was Artichoke, and that included 149 sub-projects. Those, yeah. And those sub-projects range from what I just described to open-air testing in the United States, experimentation on prisoners, experimentation on soldiers, experimentation on college students.
Would these people know they were being experimented on and gave their approval?
No, except for the quote-unquote voluntary Army soldiers.
Oh, yeah.
And the way the Volunteer Army program worked is it started in 1959, and the guys were just told that they would be doing experimentation on new weapons.
Los Angeles, Diane Sawyer.
Good evening and welcome. We started looking into our first story after we heard about a bizarre trend in psychotherapy across this country. As you know, today more and more people are confronting ugly memories of childhood sexual abuse. But did you realize there is a growing network of psychiatrists and psychologists who believe their patients, particularly the female patients, were abused in satanic rituals? Jay Shadler investigated their world of covens and sacrifices.
Let your mind go deeper and deeper and deeper.
In cadence, slow and reassuring, a therapist leads his patient into her past.
Deeper and deeper and deeper.
During 2 days of therapy, Vanessa, the name she's asked us to use, will drift through dozens of emotions and personalities.
Oh, God. Lola, what is your job?
I'm the seductress.
Susie, how old are you?
3.
Your name?
Rudolph.
Vanessa originally sought psychiatric help for depression and eating disorders, but as her therapy continued, she began to remember episodes of sexual abuse at the hands of her father. Those memories then turned into vivid recollections of satanic rituals.
It was premeditated and systematic, methodical, fragmenting of our personalities and then using other children and sacrifices to terrorize us.
Children were murdered?
Mm-hmm.
What happened?
One time there was a baby there, and they stabbed the baby and killed it, and we all had to drink blood.
Though Vanessa's father denies every accusation, and there are no police records to substantiate her claims, her memories seem brutally real. In words and pictures, she has recalled a childhood poisoned with physical, sexual, and psychological abuse.
How did you know it was true? How did you know the memory was true?
I became the little girl who observed that. That's who I became during that memory, and I was terrified.
Have you guys ever heard of Candy Jones, the former model who claims she was mind-controlled by the CIA? Candy Jones is considered the most famous model from the 1940s and 50s. She married this man, Henry Conover, who was the first fashion mogul and had one of the first fashion modeling agencies. He also invented the concept of the cover girl and used his muse, Candy Jones, and during World War II, she was on 11 magazine covers. Throughout World War II, she traveled throughout Europe to perform for the troops. In 1945, she was in the Philippines performing for troops when she became sick with malaria. And that's when she met a doctor by the name of Gilbert Jensen. Of course, this wasn't his real name. After getting divorced, she needed some extra money, so she opened up a modeling school. And this was when a mysterious FBI agent approached her and asked if he would be able to receive some mail at the address of her modeling agency. She said she felt it was her patriotic duty, so she said yes. In 1972, she married a radio host, a man named Long John Nibel. After getting married, he noticed that Candy would have these episodes. She would become angry and violent and would completely change in her demeanor and then have no recollection of doing it after. He called this the voice. She had also been suffering with insomnia, so he said, "Why don't we try hypnosis?" When he put her under hypnosis, he found out that actually she had a split personality. Her other personality was named Arlene, but Arlene had very specific details about working for the CIA. Arlene claimed to have worked on all of these secret missions across the world, including traveling to Vietnam for the CIA. She started to come out about her claims, saying that she was a victim of government mind control and that she had been involved in some type of secret program. There was a lot of speculation about this, whether it was just delusions or false memory syndrome. Go check my video on false memory syndrome. But then Candy found a passport, and it was a photo of her with a black wig and dark makeup, and it said Arlene Grant. And there was stamps in this passport from all over the world. Yet she had no recollection of ever doing this. After these discoveries, information about Project MK Ultra made it to the public. And this was an illegal human experimentation conducted by the CIA. The CIA claims that they ended all of the MK Ultra testing in 1973 and that all the documents would be destroyed. But many people claim to still be victims of this experiment. Check out the Control of Candy Jones for the full story, and follow if you enjoy this type of content.
I have never heard of Candy Jones. Has any one of you heard of this story? Now, I have heard similar stories of movie stars, singers being spies, CIA cover-ups, informants, or controlled in some capacity by frequencies, push of buttons, and words, and even hand signals. All right, let's keep diving.
Obviously, we covered the article that was written by former Japan Times editor Yoichi Shimatsu, who claims he ran the same circles as Kamala Harris in Berkeley, personally hates her, made that very clear, hates her mother, who he claims was a part of the MK Ultra program. Now, we did not speak much or at length about the MK Ultra program. We have very much on this show. For those of you that are new to listening to this podcast, it is an important program for you to familiarize yourself with, because you do have to become awakened to how tremendously evil our government is, that they engaged in this long period of being quite obsessed with how to brainwash people. And I'm talking brainwash individuals. They were obsessed with being able to delete memories from their brains and being able to insert memories into their brains. Really terrifying stories of people that they were able to convince to commit crimes, people that you thought, when you learned about all these serial killers, oh my gosh, Netflix telling you about serial killers, this must be the story. A lot of these people were government operatives. I mean, I would offer a guess that the concept of a serial killer came out of government operatives. I
don't care what you feel about Candace Owens. She is a real G, a real one, for real. She's very smart, and listen to what she's saying there. This is just part 1 of MK Ultra series. There is so much to dive into here. So much we can explore. So many stories from victims and those who are wanting to expose the truth. Candace Owens, we're going to dive some more into what she has to say on the MK Ultra and other victims. Let's keep diving.
Believe attention, it maybe is possible. And with the entire world now looking at Yoichi Shimatsu's piece, his belief, he is certain that Kamala's mom was involved in the MK Ultra program, and that is about psychological brainwashing people. Might be something that could lead to a Manchurian type candidate. I am thinking that everything that he is expressing, particularly about Kamala, her past marriage, probably has a lot of merit to it, but we are going to find out, guys. So, of course, stay tuned.
An entertainer's mind control breaks down during the live appearance, and we get a glimpse of the truly bizarre behavior these people demonstrate behind closed doors.
I was a little down. I found out I was injured and I had to have surgery again, or another knee. But at the end of the day, I have amazing teammates. Guys like Draymond, everybody on this team.
Feeling great. I feel nervous, a little bit overwhelmed. I feel a little shaky. I don't know what's wrong with me. No, but it's good. It's good. You go. It's good.
People of Australia and of our show, we were very empathetic about what happened and very sort of horrified. And so we were wondering, how is everyone going? How's Kim doing?
What? Okay.
I'm sorry, is there someone talking to you?
Yes, sorry.
Sorry about that. So I just was wondering
They
how
just
everyone's
came
doing.
in.
Hello, Courtney. Have we lost you?
A glitch typically occurs when a victim suddenly switches to another alter. Sometimes a trigger word is unwittingly used and they are suddenly thrown into another mode, so to speak. The most famous live glitch was Al Roker's notorious freezing incident during a taping of The Today Show.
Let's make it real awkward.
That's exactly how you have to have a certain amount of distance between
Yes,
the bodies
exactly.
in your high.
Yes, like they say in Catholic school, leave room for the Holy Ghost. Anyway, there is a lot of memories today, actually. It's a big day in music history.
35 years ago today, Elvis Presley passed away.
Another sign of MK Ultra is the existence of alternate identities, and while this condition may be relatively rare in the normal world, it's surprisingly common in the twisted realm of the entertainment industry. Beyoncé has Sasha Fierce, Nicki Minaj has Roman Zelensky, and Britney Spears has a British-speaking alter.
Roman is a crazy boy who lives in me, and he says the things that I don't want to say. I think he was born out of rage. He was conceived in rage.
It must be nice to have like an ignorant loudmouth who you can just sort of blame every.
He wants to be blamed. I don't want to blame him. I ask him to leave, but he can't. He's here for a reason. People have brought him out. People conjured him up. Now he won't leave.
Something that takes over me, and we named it Sasha, because it's like two different people for me, and I love performing, but I think I'm a little boring in real life. You're not.
All right, so I don't know if that's MK Ultra or if that's, switching in between their demonic states when they split to their alternate ego. All right, let's keep diving.
It was discovered that this ability could be passed genetically from one generation to the next. Children of multi-generational abuse, for instance, already have a well-developed ability to dissociate. Elite bloodline families traveled to exotic locales such as India and Tibet to study Eastern philosophy, especially yogis and the Tibetan Buddhist, who have an excellent ability to dissociate. They learned the secrets of abuse, dissociation, and its hereditary properties, and set out to pass this gift from generation to generation, a practice that continues to this day. One of the key tip-offs for scientists that memory and dissociation could be passed from one generation to the next was the monarch butterfly. Each year, monarch butterflies from across North America make an incredible journey. From as far north as Canada, millions of butterflies descend on a small plot of land in Mexico for the winter. Once spring arrives, they begin the long journey back. The kicker? It takes 3 generations of monarchs to make the 2,500-mile journey. No butterfly making the return journey has ever flown that route before. So how do they know where to go? The answer lies in what researchers call epigenetic memory. Memories learned by parents, which are then passed genetically to their children. Due to their remarkable ability to pass information genetically, as well as the fluttering feeling often described during dissociation, the monarch butterfly is the international symbol for trauma-based mind control. Trauma-based mind control victims are told to think of the programming experience as that of going into a cocoon. The cocoon is not pleasant, but as a result, a beautiful butterfly emerges. Victims tend to identify with the monarch butterfly. For this reason, the deliberate creation of programmed alter identities is known as monarch programming. Once aware, one will begin to notice butterfly symbolism at an alarming frequency in popular media and culture. Originally, only old occult families possessed the ability to completely dissociate and create multiples. Elite families to this day breed with other such families who have also been into ritual child abuse. This is where secret societies and occult groups come in. Organizations which have, throughout generations, not only curated and cultivated this secret knowledge, but facilitated its practice. These families are multi-generational Satanist, meaning that each generation has belonged to a satanic coven of some kind going back centuries, and the creation of multiples is part of rituals they have performed since antiquity. Programmers have codified these ancient practices into a specific methodology for the deliberate creation of multiple personalities, also known as trauma-based mind control. The ability to dissociate and create multiples only grows stronger with each generation that is subjected to abuse. These elite families view the ability to dissociate as a valuable endowment that must be passed carefully from one generation to the next. While this ability may be passed genetically, it must be activated through childhood trauma. Without the trauma that abuse and torture create, the mind never fully develops its dissociative ability to the point of creating multiples. Extensive testing is done at a young age to gauge their ability to dissociate. Programmers will not spend time trying to split a mind that cannot dissociate. It would be a waste. Once the programmers have built a good dissociative ability and highly hypnotizable base, they can exploit this mechanism within the mind to create alter identities completely tailored to their liking. While only 20% of the general population is easily hypnotized, trauma makes one highly hypnotizable. Through trauma and hypnosis, multiple dissociated parts will be created. Some will think they are little children, animals, or even gems and stones. Each one will have their own talents and abilities to lend to the set of alters known as the system. These alters can now be called up at any time their handler wishes, by a code phrase, color, or sound. Once these alters have been created and triggers implanted correctly, the programmer has essentially a human robot. But how are these human robots used, and for what nefarious purposes?
Marilyn Monroe is considered the original Hollywood mind control slave and possibly the most iconic, recognizable sex symbol of all time. However, behind her photogenic smile was a fragile individual who was exploited and subjected to monarch mind control. She had a difficult and unstable youth, being abused as a child, which made her a prime target for beta programming, a sexual slave form of mind control. Before becoming famous, Norma Jean went by the name Mona and worked as a stripper at a burlesque house in Los Angeles, where she first came into contact with Anton LaVey, the founder of the Church of Satan. LaVey's biography mentions having an affair with Monroe, but what he really meant was he became her handler and Monroe became his favorite beta sex kitten slave. The highest level of beta kitten slaves are used to serve as presidents. She was JFK's presidential model. Presidential models are given diamonds to signify their beta kitten status, hence diamonds are a girl's best friend. Her death, claimed to be by suicide from pill overdose, was at the young age of 36 and is one of the first mysterious celebrity deaths in popular culture. Jack Clemens, the first LAPD officer who investigated her death scene, has gone on record stating that he believes she was actually murdered. Strange events happened that night. Police were called more than an hour after Monroe was found dead. There were multiple pill bottles in her room, but no water. The time of death given by witnesses changed several times. Prime witness Eunice Murray left the country and was never questioned again. Are diamonds really a girl's best friend?
Best friend. Weekend. So when he put her in a hypnotic trance, woke her up, we went home. It was a Friday, and she was stuck in that trance for the entire weekend till I could get a hold of him to snap her out of that. He said she was out of the scope of his practice. He knew somebody that did deprogramming, but he said it was very painful. and that she would have to go stay somewhere separate from me, and that was not okay. So we find that when you look at Allie's CPS reports, they start at 3 months old for sexual abuse. If you know anything about psychology or human development, you know that a child's personality doesn't start developing till later. So when they're starting to split the kids as infants, they've not had time to develop their personality. These people that are teaching, to reintegrate the alters together, there's no core personality there. So they're creating a mess. Those things are all triggers for MK Ultra. So if you're a survivor, please be very careful. There are very many people that are placed to keep you silent.
Gerald Ford is not a pedophile per se. He's what I refer to as trisexual. He'll try anything. Any age, anybody, anytime, anywhere, just as long as he had control. Because he had a perversion of power, in addition to his interest in mind control. Therefore, it was Gerald Ford who came out to our house and explained to my father how to raise me in the project according to government specifications. My father had been caught sending this child pornography through the U.S. mail, and therefore he was approached and told that if he sold me into that project, that he would gain immunity from prosecution. My father remains free from prosecution to date for so-called reasons of national security. My father thought it was just absolutely wonderful and immediately sold me into the project. He felt like the government condoned child abuse. So did I. I certainly felt like the government did. And my father went on to have 5 more children to raise in the project, so there were 7 of us in all. The rest are still awaiting freedom. Once my father agreed to sell me into the project, I was taken routinely to Mackinac Island, Michigan, which is a political retreat where the Michigan governor's mansion is located. It was a bohemian grove of sorts where politicians met and discussed New World Order controls, where they discussed mind control of the masses, mind control in the school systems, how to use occultism as a trauma base. One of my sexual abusers at that time was the Prime Minister of Canada, Pierre Trudeau. Pierre Trudeau is a professed Jesuit. Now, the Jesuits are an intelligence arm of the Catholic Vatican. There's a criminal faction within these Jesuits. I'm certainly not saying all Catholics are bad, nor am I saying all CIA is bad or all politicians. There's good and bad in everything. But nevertheless, Pierre Trudeau represented this criminal faction of the Catholic Church, of the Jesuits, who believed in mind control of the masses because they wanted to be the one world church in the New World Order. The money that was being brought in through the church was funding New World Order controls. And he firmly believed in mind control. Another sexual abuser of mine was then Michigan Senator and later U.S. Congressman Guy Vanderjagt. This is the same Guy Vanderjagt that went on to head the Republican National Committee that put George Bush into the office of president. It was at Mackinac Island, Michigan, when I was 13 years old, that I was dedicated to the senator who had become my owner in this mind control project. That's U.S. Senator Robert C. Byrd. Senator Byrd is a Democrat from West Virginia. And again, as you'll notice as I reveal any names, that this doesn't have anything to do with party lines. Democrats and Republicans both are involved because it's not about party lines. It's about who's for the New World Order and who's not. Nevertheless, Senator Byrd had been in office as I've been alive. He's still in office today. He's been head of our Senate Appropriations Committee, which means he held the purse strings of our country. He decided where money would be spent. And I know from having witnessed and experienced and saw so much behind the scenes that Senator Byrd was appropriating money in directions that would allow for New World Order controls. Not only that, but my father, for having sold me into this project, was granted an a lucrative military contract for making camshafts for military automobiles and all. My father became extremely wealthy on his 6th grade education. Senator Byrd, as my owner, would decide where I should go, when, what operations I would be forced to carry out during the Reagan-Bush administration, what places I should be taken specifically for mind control programming. Senator Byrd directed all of my activities. Also around that time, I'd made my first communion in Muskegon St. Francis de Sales Church. Having made my first communion, I also endured an extra ritual after that was referred to as the right to remain silent. That's R-I-T-E, as in ritual. This involved Congressman Vanderjack and the head of our church at that time, a Father Don, and they subjected me to an occult blood ritual. This was so horrific. It was this reversal of the Catholic Mass. It confused my mind because when a person's operating on a subconscious level because they're so traumatized that consciously there's no place for what they're enduring, the subconscious mind has no ability to discern and to question and to reason the same way that the conscious mind does. And this reversal of the Catholic Mass into occultism just made it all seem to run together in my mind. It was absolutely horrific. This blood ritual was so horrible that my mind readily accepted the mind manipulation that I endured afterwards, a hypnotic language, the neuro-linguistic programming, mind-controlled programming, that actually changed the way that my brain was functioning so that, you know, that part of my brain that I said would open up to deal with my father's abuse again and again? They changed that so that they decided when, where, and how that particular compartment of my brain would be opened and accessed. And they replaced the triggering mechanism with hypnotic codes, keys, and triggers, hand signals. There's also phone tones that can also open those neuron pathways and give access to the compartmentalized memory as well. They replaced that at that time. And this was with this right to remain silent. I also had a silence in my head after that because up until that time, I heard, it was just my own voice, but I heard my voice arguing back and forth with all these different perceptions and from the different compartments in order that I could formulate some kind of a decision about things. I remember before the right to remain silent that I had some free thoughts of my own, and I had hoped for a place in the world where people didn't abuse each other. I'd hoped to have 10 children that I knew would be at least 10 children in this world that weren't abused. I'd hoped for those things, but with the right to remain silent, I lost my capacity, my ability for free will thinking. I lost my ability to even hope anymore. I lost all free will entirely. This right to remain silent silenced this argument that always went on in my head, and instead, all I ever heard from that point on was the voices of my abusers directing me, telling me exactly what it was I was supposed to do. I could only robotically follow those instructions and carry them out. By the time I was ready for high school, Senator Byrd ordered that I be sent to Muskegon Catholic Central High School. At that time, there was an enormous emergence of information. The Catholics had long since learned the effects of trauma on the human mind. They'd learned it and kept records of it for so many years, with such things as the Spanish Inquisition and other aspects where people who didn't follow the belief systems were wiped out. The Crusaders had also recorded a great deal of information pertaining to trauma on the human mind. This information was being merged with the Hitler-Himmler research that the CIA had taken and had been advancing on. The combination of the merging of the information was very powerful. And Muskegon Catholic Central was a place where this information was being brought together. was at Catholic Central that the very basis, the very groundwork for Global Education 2000 was being implemented. This is Goals 2000, outcome-based education. There's many different names for the program that's being implemented in our school systems, is being forced on our children by the federal government. Global Education 2000 was designed to increase our children's learning capacity while decreasing their ability to critically analyze. That way they would just readily accept whatever they were told without any question and just take all the information in.
All right, that wraps up another one for the HFC podcast. Man, that was a long, detailed description of a testimony that poor woman went through and the names she dropped. Do your research. And that leads us into the next two segues. Allie Carter and Epstein. We're going to do two deep dives on Allie Carter and Epstein. Until then, stay safe, stay blessed in these dark, deceptive times. HFC out. Peace.